All right, folks, seeing that it is 6 o'clock and that we have a quorum combined, both for those that are joining virtually this evening as well as in person, I'd like to call to order the Wildwood School Building Committee on this evening of April 3rd, 2025. As always, if we can begin with a roll call, please, Vivian.
Absolutely. Thank you. Diane Allen.
Here.
Greg Bendel.
Here.
Kate Bissell.
Kate is absent.
Dr. Brand.
Here.
Kevin Kyra.
Here.
Michael Camosio.
Here.
Justin Couche. Marianne Galezzo.
Here.
Nicholas Golden.
Here.
Christine Holleran. John Holloway. Dennis Kelly.
Here.
Paul Melorani.
Here.
Craig Miner.
Here.
Christine Murray. Judy O'Connell.
Here.
Christine Pendergast. David Ragsdale. Paul Ruggiero.
Here.
Stacy Scott. Eric Schlegel.
Here.
Stephen Turner. And myself, yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Vivian. Item number 2, no minutes to approve tonight, but item number 2 will go right to purpose of this meeting is discussion of consultant contracts for the project. And with that, I'll turn over to Eric.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone for meeting on what is relatively short notice. Given the stage we are in the project, I did want to sit down and meet with the committee regarding our consultant contracts. The first one that we have up is the OPM contract. As folks are aware, just so folks who are, if anybody's watching this at home, the way that MSBA structures their designer and OPM contracts for MSBA projects is you sign up with an OPM and a designer, and their contract runs through the end of schematic design. That is on purpose. So both SMMA's contract and Dore Whittier's contract will expire at the end of the schematic design phase. For purposes of the OPM contract, I did want to let the committee know that after multiple meetings and of the leadership team, an in-person meeting with SMMA, SMMA's leadership and members of our leadership, conversations with various members of the committee, and conversations with legal counsel, conversations with MSBA. It has been determined that we're not going to be moving forward with SMMA into the construction phase. And that's something I wanted folks to be aware of. Importantly, in my conversations with the MSBA, they are not concerned about this. There's a reason why they structure their contracts such that they don't just go from start to finish. It's so that the municipalities can make a determination as to whether or not there's an appropriate fit between the consultants and the town. I had very long conversations with our Craffian, who is the lead in SMMA. We had meetings expressing some of our concerns about moving forward, and at the end of the day, rather than exercise our option, which we had an option to make a change in key personnel at the town's discretion, rather than do that, SMMA indicated that they would just agree to amicably part ways, and we would move on with the process of getting another OPM. My conversations with MSBA, they provided an outline as to how that process would work. We're basically going to be redoing the OPM selection process from module 2. So what that means is we have to submit them a request for services. Robin McElhaney, who we've worked with at MSBA, provided us a calendar to see the quickest way to get an OPM back on board with the town. And so that means we have to get a request for services to the MSBA for their review by April 17th. We would put an advertisement in the Central Register by May 1st. The advertisement would appear in the Central Register by May 7th. And then we'd have 2 weeks of the statutory minimum, 2 weeks to have applications due, which should have them back on May 21st. And then we would have a selection package to the MSBA by June 11th. We couldn't hire an OPM until they approve it at their July 7th OPM meeting. So they have a meeting where they have to, as they did before, they have to review our process and our choice, and they have to kind of give their stamp to it. But if we went through that process, it means in early July, we would be able to execute a contract with an OPM. In my conversations with SMA and with MSBA, they indicated that they feel like the phase, the schematic design phase ends not at the submission on May 1st, but at the June 25th MSBA hearing. So Julie will be on board until that hearing. And then within a couple of weeks after that, we should have another OPM that would be stepping on board to take us through the remainder of the contract and construction.
What was the July date?
The OPM panel is July 7th.
July 7th.
What was the contract signed with SMA? I thought it was April 30th.
Well, it was through the end of schematic design. And there was an April date in there, but that was based on before we had extended, when we extended the dates back in when we extended to October, we moved from the April meeting to the June meeting. And so it wasn't clear to me whether the contract meant that they were going through April or going through June. But MSBA indicates that the contracts their contracts are through phases, not through specific dates. So that was a question, and I put it to them, and that was their answer. I have just in full transparency, I've spoken to Dore Whittier about this multiple times. Lee and I have had probably 3 or 4 conversations about this, so he is aware that this is happening and is, understands the town's position and is fully prepared to kind of move forward. I spoke to Fontaine about it, David Fontaine Jr. about it, made them aware of the town's position, and he's fully prepared to move forward. In full transparency, one of the reasons why I was in favor of the construction manager at risk method of procurement was in the event that we made the town made this choice, we still have 2 really great consultants on board to help us through to the vote phase. So when SMA offered to take $35,000 out of their contract that was earmarked for their third party costs estimator and put it towards a CM at risk, in my mind, that means we have the people who prepared our budget and did the estimating are Fontaine and Dore Whittier. And so those are the folks that we're going to continue with after this process. And so this was not a choice taken lightly or done quickly. But I did want folks to know that it's a choice that has been made. So we're going to move it forward. Interestingly enough, that OPM will be down by the contract by the budget that we've already put forward in the 3011 form. So we've already set up a budget for that OPM. They won't be negotiating. I mean, they may be offering less, but they won't be, they'll be bound to that budget. We're not going to hire an OPM for more than we put in the 3011 form. And my understanding is that OPMs all understand this. It happens not frequently, but on occasion, and there's I know that there's multiple OPM firms that are looking forward to bidding on this when and if we open it up. So that being said, I wanted to open it up to see if anybody on the committee had any questions about that process or how we're going to be moving forward with respect to the OPM.
Just to clarify, the date that you're going to go out for RFQ for services,
We're putting, so the ad is going to appear in the Central Register on May 7th.
May 7th. Okay, thank you.
For those of you who have worked with Tommy Donahue in our office, Tommy and I have talked about this. He's on board. We have the procurement package that was put out before, so we're not going to be recreating the wheel. It should be relatively straightforward to have these packages done. And he and I are going to start working on the request for services tomorrow for the 17th deadline.
Is there any other questions from folks that are virtually joining us this evening? That does not appear. So. Okay. The second contract is with regards to Dore Whittier. Their contract also only goes through schematic design. I'm fully prepared to execute an amendment with them that continues them through the construction phase, assuming funding happens. From my perspective, and I'd be interested to hear what other people think. I've been impressed at their flexibility to kind of hear what the town is saying and kind of move their design thoughts closer to our vision instead of being kind of stuck with their own vision. And I think that they've did a good job with the high school and so I wouldn't have any concerns about going forward with them. Anybody else have any kind of thoughts or feelings about that?
I agree. I think Dore Whittier's done a nice job for the town.
Nick, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Dr. Brand. Yeah, I just say anecdotally, I was very impressed with how they handled the abutters meeting. I thought that Lee, when he jumped up on stage, kind of walked people right through everything. I really appreciated his directness in that. I think sticking with them is a good course of action.
Thanks, Nick. Anyone else? Comments? Questions?
I would just add that I've been really impressed. I think others with Ronnie. I think she does a great job. She presents. She's always very thorough. She does a great job answering any questions that have been asked. Just think her and Lee, but I just wanted to give her kudos because I've really been impressed with her.
Yeah, I agree. One
of the things that happens that the committee doesn't get a chance to see, but that happens behind the scenes is specifically around the educational program planning. A huge part of that, and not so much necessarily, certainly has been presented and discussed through the building committee, but there have been an awful lot of exchanges of information and co-planning with them, and they've been terrific through that process. Very responsive. That's sort of died down a little bit now because the program plan is buttoned up, but there's still an awful lot of communication that happens outside of the meetings with Dore Whittier, trying to put together the pieces that we need to from the educational standpoint. And they've been, they're just, they're solid partners. What you see in the public here is what happens behind the scenes, and they've been great to work with in that capacity. So.
Anyone else? Feels like.
I think they've adapted to everything we've asked and had some great ideas and great input. So I'm pretty happy with them, and working with them on the high school build throughout that process. There's some players in the background still of that. I thought they were great to deal with through construction.
So Eric, can I just ask to clarify for this particular part of the agenda tonight, is there any action that the committee needs to take relative to either the first or the second item?
No, I mean, I think we'll be voting on an extension to the contract for Dore Whittier probably later on in the summer, once we actually, there's gonna have to be a negotiation.
Okay.
But
Nothing
nothing
tonight.
tonight, not for purposes of that, those two, those are more. Updates and making sure that we're all on the same page. Judy.
I just wanted to say that I think it should be restated, you know, it bears repeating that you took a very methodical approach coming in as a new manager and working alongside the organization to see how things were going. Didn't rush to any decisions. We got us through to this point collectively as a committee. We've reached the major milestones through this process to get to this point. I do agree with the Dore Whittier piece, how well they've worked together, and I think we are in a very good place. The meetings that I've been a part of, they've been very thoughtful. They've been very detailed. I think everybody collectively on all fronts work together to arrive at the conclusions that you're articulating tonight. Ultimately, it's a committee input, but you know, you are the town manager and are executing decisions and showing leadership in a big way. And I think that should be noted. You know, Dore Whittier has worked very well with Fontaine, and I believe that relationship is off to a great start. So I think it should also be conveyed that MSBA did not see any issues with this change and felt that this would not be disruptive or problematic or impede the success of this project. So I think that's a real important point to put out there to the people on this committee and to the public, that this is not going to have a detrimental effect on this project and meeting the future milestone dates that we have before us.
In fact, if, you know, the MSBA said that if you're gonna, this is the time to do it, set up this way. So, you know, if we need to change consultants, the funding module 5, which is what we're gonna go into after June, doesn't have any deliverables from the OPM to MSBA. So it's all gonna be and if we're only gonna be a couple of weeks into module 5, by the time we'll be able to get in front of a panel and hopefully allow to have them approve whoever we decide to go forward with.
Diane, I see your hands raised.
Yes, I just wanted to concur with most of the people are saying tonight. I also felt that Dore Whittier did a very, very good job, and I'm pleased with their performance so far. And I think Randy, what Greg said, she does a terrific job at the meeting. Very, very knowledgeable. And I'm sure there's a lot that goes on with you and them in questioning and everything, that there's a lot of phone calls going back and forth. So I totally support staying on with Dore Whittier for the next phase. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane.
Chair, just one more historical footnote, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've done this in the past. I think it was actually the Intel project. We changed contracts in the middle, and actually obviously turned out to be a wonderful project. So this does happen.
That is true. That is true.
Good.
Okay. Do you have what you need?
Yeah.
First. Okay.
And through the chair, just a question, Mrs. Slagle. If we're voting to establish a new OPM review committee, shouldn't we vote not to extend the contract of the old OPM?
That there's no need to.
Really?
No, the contract, we'd have to vote to extend it. So the contract expires of its own without an extension.
Okay.
So,
Thanks.
but that's,
Yeah.
Excellent question.
So then if there isn't anything further, that brings us to item number 3 on the agenda tonight, vote to establish an owner's project manager review committee.
yes. So, you know, similar to the CM at risk committee that we did a couple months ago, and to both the designer architect committee and the OPM committee that this committee has already done, we have to establish an OPM review committee. I've asked some folks if they'd be willing to do it, because I know it's a little bit of time commitment, and so I know that, you know, there's going to be a window from May 21st when we get the applications in, and then we have to have a selection package. Has to be received by the MSBA by June 11th. So we're talking about, you know, 3 weeks. And during that 3 weeks, we have to shortlist interview, and have a meeting selecting a person. So it's not going to be a long committee, but it's going to be probably a pretty intense committee because you're going to have to, there's a lot's going to have to fit into that 3 weeks. I would, so just in kind of full disclosure, there's some people I think would make sense to be on this committee. One of them is Dennis, because Dennis is going to have to be in this person's back pocket for 3 years. And so I've asked Dennis, and if this committee is willing, he's willing to be on the school committee. I talked to Paul. Paul indicated that he would be willing to do it. Paul's on this the permanent building committee and has worked through multiple buildings with the town, and I think that's a great person to be on it. I asked Glenn to ask Paul Ruggiero whether or not he'd be willing to be a school representative. I know that Paul's I tried to but I think everybody knows Paul's experience, and I think he's done this a bunch of times, so I think that's really great. And I would ask Judy to be on the committee, since she's going to be the chair, and is going to have to work with this OPM pretty close for the next few years as well. So I was looking for one other person. I hadn't had a chance to ask anyone else if they wanted to do it. And so, I mean, there are folks here. If there's another person who wanted to, who felt like they had the time during that 3 weeks to kind of like lean into it. Diane's got her hand up.
Yeah. Having gone through it with the town hall and the senior center, went through that phase. I would be happy. I'll be home on the, May, and I'll be back in May, and you're not going to go out till May 7th, and they're due in on the 21st. If there's no one else, unless someone else, would like to go in place, but I'd be willing to be a part of it.
Thanks, Diane.
So I would make a motion that the committee appoint an OPM review committee of Paul Mulroney, Paul Ruggiero, Judy O'Connell, Dennis Kelly, and Diane Allen.
Second.
Second. We have motion second. Any further discussion?
Just one thing. So I have this one date that I can't do it, so we'll be able to work around one day at the beginning of June.
I would hope. I would think so.
Just being twice as early the next day.
I mean, I think we would compare calendars and figure out some commonality.
Yeah.
So motion and a second. Further discussion? Appears so. So then with that, we will need a roll call. Vivian, are you still with us?
Of course.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg Bendel,
Yes.
Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Michael Camosio,
Yes.
Marianne Galezzo,
Yes.
Nick Golden,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly.
Yes.
You're voting for yourself, yes. Paul Mulroney,
Yes.
Craig Minor.
Yes.
You made the motion, so thank you. Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Great. Well, the motion definitely passes. Item number 4, unless there's anything further, Eric, that you need on that. Any other new
I
items?
apologize. I was able to write down that Craig Minor made the motion. I didn't catch who made the second.
So I actually made the motion, Vivian, Eric.
Okay, so, perfect. And he seconded.
And
Thank you.
Greg seconded it.
Yes.
right?
Yes. Greg Bendel was the second.
Thank you so much. I just want to make
Okay.
sure I got it correctly.
Thanks, Vivian. Any other new items or discussion tonight, Judy?
Just wanted to share that the water bill insert is completed at Shawshene, so it's ready for pickup. They turned it around literally in less than 48 hours. So we will absolutely meet that deadline, and they came out great. So
And they go out again when? Because you're so.
I have to deliver them to the tax collector's office by April 17th.
Okay,
So it'll be probably the following week that they'll actually go out.
fantastic, great, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Judy. Thank you.
Thank you to Michael Comosio for really forging that relationship with Shashi, and it's really a credit to him and everyone else that put that together. Working hands basically to put it together.
I know that just
Thanks.
on a somewhat similar note, I know Michael's reached out to already thinking about the July 4th time period and what the promotional or informational items can be for that. So to be continued on that, but thank you for raising that, Michael. I know that we have to start thinking about that soon. So anything other than that? Thank you, Judy. Anything else further this evening? Okay, well, thank you again for everyone for squeezing yet another meeting into a very busy time period. Much appreciated.
Yes.
Thank you for Eric for your work on the contractors. Obviously, an important part of this project. If there's nothing further tonight, then seeking a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
First, and we have a second. Vivian, roll call, please.
Absolutely. Diane Allen,
Yes.
Greg, you seconded. Dr. Brand,
Yes.
Kevin Kyra,
Yes.
Michael Comosio,
Yes.
Mary Ann Galezzo,
Yes.
Nick Golden,
Yes.
Dennis Kelly,
Yes.
Paul Melorani,
Yes.
Craig Minor,
Yes.
Judy O'Connell,
Yes.
Paul Ruggiero,
Yes.
Eric Schlegel,
Yes.
and myself. Yes. Have a great night, everyone.
Great, thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.